welcome once again to the Life of a Marketer podcast. We stream this live every Tuesday and Thursday on social media at 11 a.m. Central Standard Time. You can also catch us on YouTube, which gets released at the same time, and so you can subscribe on YouTube. Today, I have Angelo with us. Angelo is a fractional chief marketing officer. And Angela, I'm going to let you introduce yourself. Tell us about who you are and what you do.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you for having me. The introduction, I have to say, the life of a marketer. I feel like maybe this is a therapy session. I don't know for me and for the people that are listening. So hopefully, we can put some good advice out there, because as a marketer, we all know there's usually a lot of stress, a lot of pressure to meet whatever goals and objectives that we have. And certainly there's a lot of various channels of communications that most of our owners of our corporations or companies that we work with truly don't understand. And so expectations are set that maybe not be realistic. So given all that, I am a fractional chief marketing officer. I work both in the B2B and B2C space. My history actually puts me in the advertising agency world for about 65% of my career. I had the opportunity to grow my own business, and I sold it to a large advertising agency, and they turned around and started another one that I helped run. But I've also been client side, so I have a unique perspective of sitting in both chairs. My first foray into the client side was I was convinced that clients really didn't understand that what they were doing and how to deal with an agency, and I was going to show them, and then I fell into the trap of being just a typical client, which was interesting to me. But I've gone back and forth, and I think that, as I said, gives me a unique perspective. But ultimately, I decided when I started this company in 2014, I wanted to do the part that I really love, and that's more the strategic work and not the tactical work. So I spend a lot of time in utilizing market research, both qualitative and quantitative. I do have a couple of data scientists that work with me, so we can do a lot of predictive modeling. But I take that information, whether it's customers, it's prospects, it's the market itself, and really digging in from a strategic standpoint. We leverage that in messaging and positioning, and also in building strategic plans. I like to call myself an architect of marketing, if you will. And then at some point in time, when those plans are in place, we turn ourselves into general contractors, and then we bring in teams of people to help execute those, and then we tend to manage them after that.
Awesome. That sounds fascinating to me. That sounds like really fun work. I appreciate that.
It has been. I've worked with everything, as I like to say, from semiconductors to ice cream and everything in between. So,
Interesting.
It's been a very, very interesting work that I've had the opportunity to do, from startups to mega corporations. So,
very good. Awesome. So, what's the best thing for you about being in the marketing industry?
I think for me, and really it boils down to what I really enjoy, and that's solving problems, and knowing that, having been on the client side and actually the agency side, that there are a lot of areas that just can't be solved by talking to yourself in the boardroom. There's a lot of case studies that show why that is a major mistake for a lot of corporations. And so really digging in and gathering that data and using it to, come up with solutions that make sense and growth. I think for me, that's the stuff that I get really excited about and put in place, and ultimately seeing how they, are followed through on and executed.
So so you're the analytical type of marketer. What are for you some of the biggest data points that are the most important for most businesses?
Well, it really depends on the business, and digging into, there's so much data. I just recently spent 7 months as a CMO for a luxury watch company, previously owned watches. And we spent a lot of time looking at our Google data, looking at our AdWords data, looking at SEO, to try to understand, the nuances of what's driving people to our site, where the interests were, where they were coming from around the country. But I've also applied that same to a current um, biodegradable, home compostable straw, and looking at where are we getting our inquiries from, where are straw bans, for example, around the country. And so really understanding the market and how we leverage that data to help provide those insights on how to go forward in communication. And I think that's, for me, digging down, that's the most important thing. Because ultimately, how do I talk to you as a potential customer if I don't really understand you? I don't know what your concerns are. I don't know what your motivations are. And so I have to understand that first before I could do anything else.
Yeah, that's fundamental marketing. I mean, that's,
Mm-hmm.
if you're looking at like media buyers, or you're looking at even SEO, if you don't have that basic information kind of, at least to a degree, understand it, it makes it very hard to do your job. And that's what, to me, sets apart really good marketers and kind of the amateur marketers, is that they take the time to go through and do that research and pull that data together. That's been my experience.
Yeah, well, as you, I'm sure, are aware, and the people listening, clients want to get right to the tactics. Now, this happened to me yesterday, as a matter of fact. That I did a marketing assessment. That's a tool that I created and laid everything out for the prospect or the client, and then they wanted to implement a program. So I did what I normally do, talked about all the due diligence, and in the meeting they said, well, we really just want to fix our website and get our social program going and do some email marketing. And so I said, I can help you with that, but I'm going to, give you a caveat up front. We're guessing at what the real relevant messages are. Now they're convinced they know, and, we'll just have to work with that. But I find more often than not, doing customer interviews, that what the client thinks and what the realities are two different things. I have a client that's 74 years old, not the age, the company. He's not 74. The company's 74 years old. And their response was, our customers love us. They know who we are, and there's not a problem. Well, in the research, we found that, yeah, they were absolutely correct, except the people that know them and are really have worked with them over the years are getting ready to retire. And the new generation of engineers have no idea who they are. And so my point to them is, your audience is retiring or frankly dying off over the next 10 years. And if you don't do something to bring up the new generation, you're not going to make it to, 84 years.
Interesting. All right. So, uh, changing gears a little bit, what sort of advice do you offer to those that are in the marketing industry right now?
Well, again, it's for people in marketing, in many situations, depending on who you are as a marketer, it seems to make sense. It's just classic of taking time to understand the relevancy of your products and services to your customer. If you don't understand that, you really can't craft messages. You really can't figure out their customer journey. Where are they at in the funnel, and how do you address them with different communications tactics or different strategies, utilizing different channels. So if I could give any advice, it would be take time, convince your clients to understand you have to do that due diligence and understand in order to have a really effective program. I'm sure I've been there, you've been there, I'm sure, and people listening, where you implement that, you write the tactics, you implement the program, and then the clients start to say, hey, it's not working. I tried SEO for 2 months, it didn't work. Well, it's like, yeah, but your expectations were off. And if you had done it the other way, we would have been, been more strategic about it. And so I find that every time that I break my rules, it just doesn't end well, because they have something in their mind, like yesterday. What's my return on investment? When can you guarantee that? So I can't guarantee it at all at this point in time. I don't know what to say to your people. That takes time. But if you want to get right to the tactical stuff, we have to have some caveats in place so there's understanding of expectations.
It's kind of like shooting without picking your target and aiming. I'm going to shoot random bullets. Hopefully, it hits the target.
Yeah,
And that's
I was going to say, when you're dealing with, whether you're doing Google ads or whatever it happens to be, and depending on how you're measuring, whether it's ROAS or whether you're just looking at leads coming in or you're looking at revenue sales, I mean, it's it takes time to understand how to move that needle and what to do. And if we all had the crystal ball, and I like to say there's no silver bullet in marketing. If we knew that we had a silver bullet, man, we'd all be rich. We wouldn't be doing podcasts, right? And so there is some experimentation to that. And clients want to know the guarantee. I had a client last year that said, what's my guarantee? And my answer to him after a long debate was, I guarantee nobody will go to your website or give you a phone call if you don't do something. So it's your choice. That's the best guarantee I can give you at this point in time.
I just recorded that in my head for when I do any sales. I guarantee if you don't do anything, no one will come to your website. I like that. That's a good way to phrase that. Appreciate that. All right. This next question is super selfish question for the sake of our podcast, because we like to invite people to our podcast. What other successful people in marketing that are like yourself that would you like to acknowledge that should be on this podcast?
Well, are you doing strictly marketing, or are you doing sales and marketing?
It could be sales and marketing. Yeah. Well, really anybody that,
Yeah.
is
So
in that field.
there's a gentleman, his name's Rich Cacuzo, and he's a fractional sales leader. And he and I are kind of have a strategic alliance. And frankly, he's one of the best sales guys in sales, strategic sales managers and leaders, whether it's VP or a chief, revenue officer. And he gets it. Sales and marketing, we always have that debate, right? What comes first, chicken or the egg? Sales and marketing don't get along. Since the day I met this guy, we have been in sync, and we have probably worked on, half a dozen or more clients together. And so, and his company is called Sales Velocity Advisors. I'd recommend you get him on. He's very insightful and works well with marketing people.
Awesome. We'll have to look into that. Thanks for that recommendation. All right. So one final question that's really just for fun. Tell me the oldest technology that you remember using, and how long have you been in the marketing industry? What did you say again?
Yeah, I didn't, but 30 plus years.
30 plus years. Wow. All right.
30 plus
Awesome.
years.
So you have seen it all. You have seen the rise of nearly every gadget and technique and fad.
Well, I'm not that old, but yeah. What would be the oldest technology?
You can't say a pencil, because the first episode that I did of this podcast, I just interviewed my mom. She works for Cisco, and I just wanted to, kind of get some experience under my belt with podcasting. And she said, "A pencil." I was like, "Mom, that's just
great.
ridiculous." She's like,
great.
"It's old, but it works still."
Boy, I would say, boy, that's a good question. I'm when I think about, some of the earlier days. So years ago, I had a little side trip, and I started a film production company. And I would say some of the video editing tools at that point in time were, given now, were archaic, considering I could probably do the same thing on my computer that I had to go sit in a studio in Hollywood for. And I would say some of that technology is fairly old. I remember somebody bringing a beta. It was a Betamax one time, trying to convince us that we should go Betamax instead of VHS. And I was like, man, that's like really old technology. And so I would probably pick on that, I think.
What is Betamax?
So Betamax, so there was a point in time when the Beta, which was a smaller kind of cassette approach to VHS, and there was a debate of what would be the upcoming technology. And so a lot of people invested money in this Beta, except the industry adopted VHS, which basically put Beta out of business. And so it's really old technology that just never went anywhere.
Was it like the tape as well? Some kind of tape?
Yeah, it was videotape. It was videotape, except it was just smaller. I don't even remember how big it was, but if a VHS was this big, then the Betas were that much smaller, and the quality just wasn't there. But the industry got behind it, and you've said in that before, if the industry standards get behind a particular technology, competing technology just gets pushed out.
Right, right. Wow, I didn't even
So,
know that
so
that.
your audience is probably running to figure out what a Betamax is.
Yeah, no, I grew up with VHS, but Betamax, I never even, no idea, never even heard
Yes,
of it.
it was a blip, and I just remember somebody coming into a meeting and was like, wanted to show us their reels, and it's like, hey, I'm using Beta. It's like a Beta. So unless you're bringing your own unit, I don't think that exists anymore. So that's the one I can remember.
Yeah, wow. I mean, it's crazy the way things like you just think about music. You had records and then the 8 track, and then you had tape, VHS along the same lines, then
Yeah,
CD,
cassettes
then
and
then DVD, and then now just everything in the cloud, just all within a very short period of time. It's
yeah. Well, you
crazy.
just think about the video industry going from the blockbusters of the world to Netflix. I mean, when Netflix, which is an interesting case study. So Netflix, when they first came out, right? They were they would mail you a CD or a DVD. And there was a point in time that Blockbuster actually had the opportunity to buy Netflix and buy Redbox. And they chose not to because they were convinced nobody would wanted to wait to receive their DVD in the mail.
Ooh,
And of course, we
ouch.
know the history is on that one. Another interesting one from a technology. There was a Vizio. When Avatar came out originally, the original Avatar in 3D, everybody was like, "Oh, 3D, that's fantastic!" And so Vizio, Panasonic, and Sony were all rushing to market with a 3D television, and ultimately Vizio got there first. And in early adoption, the early adopters, it went like crazy, and then within less than 5 years, it tanked and was gone from the market. And in post analysis, in the case study that I found, there was one primary reason. And it came up in a board meeting. That gets back to people sitting in a boardroom talking to themselves without or talking to their clients. And the reason it failed is because consumers decided they didn't want to wear 3D glasses all the time to watch television.
Duh.
And it would have been a simple, and somebody brought it up in the boardroom and they got dismissed that no, of course not, that's not, we don't, that's not going to happen. And so that was a
If they just would have
interesting
picked up the
case
phone and
study.
called, 500 people, they would have figured that out very quickly. That's
Yep.
interesting. That's
Yeah.
interesting.
So there's some.
I always run into that with clients. I'm like, can I call one of your clients? Can I call them and ask them some questions? Well, no, we don't really want you to do that. And they don't
Yeah.
talk to their actual clients and call them up, and I don't know. It's weird. It's like, to me, it's like the first thing you would think to do, but uh,
Well, a lot of companies. I mean, again, I'm living this with a new client right now, and it's like we can tell you everything they can tell you. Shouldn't our salespeople be asking that question? I said the problem with your salespeople are going to filter it. I'm going to get more out of them as a third party than your salespeople or you're going to get, because they don't want to tell you the truth. They don't want to hurt your feelings, or maybe they've told you something in the past and you don't listen. And so I agree with you. To me, it's the simplest way to truly understand why I buy you versus why I might buy a competitor, or a promise that was made that's not being kept. And it's to me, I again, that's my whole focus in my business, is that understanding of the market, the competition, so you can build those strategic plans with some kind of relevant facts based on the market, what the market is telling you versus what the salespeople or the execs in the boardroom that don't actually talk to clients. And that's the other thing. It's like, we can tell you everything. It's like, when's the last time you actually had a conversation for a while? Well, then how can you tell me you don't know who they are?
yeah, yeah, exactly. Exactly. Well, I mean, look, we try to keep this podcast short. I'm sure I could converse with you a lot longer about all of this.
Sorry,
So
I get excited.
no, no, no. I appreciate you coming on today. Thanks for coming on. This is the Life of a Marketer podcast. You can find us once again on YouTube. You can subscribe. We are going to release this on Tuesdays and Thursdays, 11 a.m. Central Standard Time on social media. We stream it. And like and subscribe. If tell a friend about our podcast. Tell your marketing friend, tell your employees. This is meant to help everybody and for us to work together. This is the Life of a Marketer podcast. Thanks once again for watching.